I found out my uncle had filed a forged power of attorney behind my back. He tried to take out $87,500 against my house. When I confronted him, he looked me in the eye and said, "You are just the placeholder." I never thought I'd have to call the sheriff on my own uncle, but when I found a forged power of attorney with my dead father's signature on it, a signature I'd watched tremble and fade over months of chemo, something inside me snapped. My name is Jess. I'm 31 years old. And 3 months after burying my dad, I discovered that the man sleeping in my spare room wasn't grieving with me. He was robbing me. The worst part? He looked me dead in the eye and told me I was just a placeholder in my own home. I grew up in a 2-bedroom Craftsman bungalow in the Woodstock neighborhood of Portland, Oregon. My dad, Frank Whitmore, bought that house in 1996 for $112,000. He was a maintenance supervisor at Legacy Emmanuel Medical Center for 26 years. My mom left when I was 4. I barely remember her face. Dad raised me alone, and he never once made me feel like something was missing. We were inseparable. Sunday dinners, Blazers games on the couch with too much popcorn, weekend hikes on the Wildwood Trail where he'd name every tree like they were old friends. I became a veterinary technician at Hawthorne Animal Clinic after graduating from Portland Community College. It wasn't glamorous, but I loved the work, and I loved coming home to tell Dad about it. He always listened like it was the most important thing he'd heard all day. When Dad was diagnosed with stage 3 pancreatic cancer in January 2024, I moved back into the house the same week. I didn't think about it. I just packed a bag and came home. I held his hand through 7 months of chemo and radiation and hospital visits that blurred together until I couldn't remember what day it was. He passed in September, quietly, in his own bed, in the house he'd paid off with 26 years of showing up to work. He left the house to me outright. Clear, notarized will, filed with his estate attorney, Linda Chow. No ambiguity, no conditions. The house was mine, free and clear, with about $140,000 in equity. That was my dad. No loose ends, no drama. Just a man who did things right. Uncle Ray Whitmore was my dad's older brother by 6 years. He'd been mostly absent for the past decade. Lived in Reno. Bounced between odd jobs and failed business ventures I heard about in fragments at Thanksgiving. He showed up to the funeral in a wrinkled sport coat, cried louder than anyone during the eulogy, and hugged me so tight I could smell the bourbon on his breath. He whispered, "Frankie would have wanted me to look after you." 2 weeks later, he appeared at my front door with 2 oversized suitcases and a duffel bag. He said Dad had promised him a room until he got back on his feet. I was hollow. I was sleeping in my father's flannel shirts and eating cereal for dinner. I was desperate for any connection to the man I'd just lost. So I didn't ask questions. I handed Ray the spare key and showed him the guest room and told myself it was what Dad would have wanted. At first he seemed harmless, quiet, mostly stayed in the spare room, watching cable news. But small things started shifting. He began answering the door when packages arrived. He introduced himself to the mail carrier by name. He told Mrs. Delgado across the street that he was co-owner, helping Jess manage things. I found out my electric bill was late for the first time ever because the mailing address had been changed. I asked Ray about it casually one evening. He laughed and waved his hand. "I updated a few things to help out. You've got enough on your plate." I felt something cold in my stomach, but I told myself I was being paranoid. He was family. He was Dad's brother. I pushed the feeling down and poured another glass of wine. Then one night, I came home from a late shift at the clinic. It was almost 11. The kitchen light was on. Ray was sitting at the table with a stack of papers, a calculator, and my father's old filing cabinet pulled open behind him. Folders were spread across the table. I could see Dad's name on several of them. I stopped in the doorway. "What are you doing?" Ray closed the folder in front of him. Slowly. He smiled at me, the way you smile at someone you don't think is paying attention. "Just organizing Frank's stuff. You shouldn't have to deal with all this alone." I said okay. I went to bed. I told myself it was fine, but I would later learn that the papers Ray was organizing that night weren't my father's old documents at all. They were brand new forgeries with my father's name on them. and they'd already been filed with the county. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late October when everything cracked open. I was on my lunch break at Hawthorne Animal Clinic, eating a turkey sandwich in the break room, when my coworker, Diana Torres, leaned over the counter and said, "Hey, do you have a second? Something weird popped up, and I don't want to freak you out." Diana had been my closest friend at the clinic for 3 years. She was the type who set Google alerts for everything: weather, news, county property filings. She'd set one on my address months ago as a favor during probate, just to flag anything that came through. That morning, an alert had triggered. A new filing with Multnomah County. Someone had submitted a durable power of attorney dated 4 months before my father's death, granting Raymond Whitmore full authority over Frank Whitmore's financial and property decisions. Attached to that filing was an application for a home equity line of credit through Columbia Credit Union in the amount of $87,500, listing both Raymond and Jessica Whitmore as co-borrowers. My hands went cold. I put the sandwich down. I read the filing twice. The signature on the power of attorney was my father's, or rather, someone's version of it. I had watched my father sign his own will. By that point, his hand shook so badly the pen skipped on the paper. The signature on Ray's document was smooth, confident, and perfectly even. It wasn't even close. I drove home that evening with a printout folded in my jacket pocket. Ray was on the couch, feet up on the coffee table, watching Jeopardy. I stood in the doorway of the living room and held up the paper. "Ray, what is this?" He glanced at it, then back at the TV. "What's what?" "A power of attorney, filed with the county, with Dad's signature on it, and a HELOC application for $87,500. Ray muted the television. He sat up slowly and looked at me. Not with guilt, not with surprise. Something flat and practiced, like he'd been waiting for this conversation and had already decided how it would go. "Your father owed me, Jess. I loaned him money over the years, tens of thousands of dollars. That house? Half of it should have been mine to begin with." My voice cracked. "Dad never mentioned owing you a dime." Ray stood up. He was a big man, 6'2", thick through the shoulders. He walked toward me, and for the first time since he'd arrived, I felt physically afraid in my own home. He pointed one finger at my chest and said, "Your father owed me this house. You're just the placeholder. You want to play this game, little girl? I've been playing it longer than you've been alive." I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my bedroom with the door locked and a kitchen chair wedged under the knob, scrolling through Oregon tenant and property law until my eyes burned. I felt sick, not just scared, but betrayed. I'd opened my home to this man because I thought it's what Dad would have wanted. I'd cooked him dinner. I'd washed his towels. And the whole time, he was filing forged documents behind my back, trying to drain the equity out of the only thing my father had left me. I texted Diana at midnight. "You might have just saved my house." She replied immediately, "Don't do anything yet. I know someone who can help." By morning, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to confront Ray again. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to cry in front of him or give him another chance to tower over me in my own hallway. I was going to build a case so airtight that when the walls closed in on Uncle Ray, there wouldn't be a single crack to slip through. Diana came through the next morning before our shift even started. She connected me with her friend Marcus Webb, a paralegal at Reeder and Calloway, a small litigation firm in downtown Portland. Diana told me, "Marcus handled something like this for his aunt 2 years ago. Identity theft, forged documents, the whole thing. He'll know exactly what to do. I called Marcus on my first break. He answered on the second ring. I told him everything in 6 minutes flat. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "Don't tip him off. Don't change the locks yet. Don't say a word. Come to the office tomorrow and bring every document you have. We're going to pull the full county record on your property and see exactly what he's filed." I said, "Okay." I went back to work. I cleaned kennels and drew blood and checked on a golden retriever recovering from surgery, and I did it all with steady hands, because I had decided something. Ray thought I was a placeholder. He thought grief made me stupid. He thought the quiet girl who poured wine and didn't ask questions would just let him take what wasn't his. He was wrong. What I didn't know yet was that Uncle Ray had already made his next move. And by the time Marcus pulled the full county records, we discovered that the power of attorney wasn't the only document Ray had forged. Marcus met me at a coffee shop on Southeast Hawthorne that Saturday. He brought a legal pad, a laptop, and a grim expression. We sat in the back corner for 2 hours and built the inventory of everything Ray had done. The forged durable power of attorney, dated May 2024, 4 months before Dad died. I called Dad's oncologist, Dr. Patel, who provided a written statement confirming that by May my father could barely hold a pen. His hands trembled so badly, a nurse had to guide his fingers for medication signatures. The smooth, confident handwriting on Ray's document was physically impossible. The HELOC application for $87,500 through Columbia Credit Union, listing both Ray and me as co-borrowers. I had never signed anything. My signature on that application was a second forgery. A utility account change form submitted to Portland General Electric, redirecting my billing address to a P.O. box registered to Raymond Whitmore. A forwarding order filed with USPS, rerouting all my mail to the same P.O. box. I had never authorized either one. Then the Ring doorbell footage. 3 weeks of it. Ray removing mail from my mailbox daily, sometimes sorting through it right there on the porch, pocketing certain envelopes, putting the rest back. Marcus also collected witness statements from 2 neighbors. Mrs. Delgado confirmed Ray had told her he was co-owner of the house. Tom Nguyen, from 2 doors down, said Ray had asked him to keep an eye on things because Jess doesn't always make the best decisions. Marcus wrote it all down in neat columns. Then he looked up at me and said, "This isn't amateur hour. This is systematic." He was right, and Ray wasn't slowing down. That same week, I noticed a locksmith's business card on the kitchen counter. I checked the Ring footage and saw Ray had called a locksmith to the house on Wednesday afternoon while I was at work. He'd had a new deadbolt installed on the spare bedroom door. His bedroom. He was fortifying, digging in, making himself harder to remove. Then I got a voicemail from Aunt Carol, Ray's ex-wife, still living in Reno. She said Ray had called her asking for money, claiming I was threatening to throw him out on the street and that he had legal rights to the property. Carol didn't believe him. She'd divorced him for a reason. But she wanted me to know he was working the phones, building a story, lining up sympathy before anyone heard my side. Then came the call that changed everything. Columbia Credit Union's fraud department. A loan officer named Shannon had flagged inconsistencies in the HELOC application and wanted to verify my identity. When I explained that I had never applied for any line of credit, Shannon went quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Ma'am, someone came into our Beaverton branch in person with your driver's license, or what looked like your driver's license." I sat down on the edge of my bed and stared at the wall. Ray hadn't just forged a power of attorney. He'd obtained, or fabricated, a copy of my ID. This wasn't grief-fueled opportunism anymore. This was planned, multi-layered identity theft. And he was sleeping 30 feet from my bedroom. Marcus moved fast after that. He filed a fraud report with the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, case number MC 2024-08871. He reached out to Linda Chow, Dad's estate attorney, who confirmed that Frank's will was unambiguous and that no power of attorney had ever been discussed, drafted, or signed during Dad's lifetime. Linda was furious. She'd known my father for over a decade. She provided a sworn declaration and offered to testify. She also flagged something Marcus called a gift. Ray's forged power of attorney contained a formatting error. It referenced an Oregon Revised Statute section that had been renumbered 2 years prior. He'd copied it from an outdated template he found online. Sloppy. Traceable. Damning. Marcus filed for an emergency protective order through Multnomah County Circuit Court, requesting Ray's immediate removal from the property on grounds of fraud, forgery, identity theft, and elder abuse of process. He attached every piece of evidence: the forged documents, the ring footage, the neighbor statements, the credit union's fraud report, Dr. Patel's medical declaration, Linda Chow's sworn statement. Every single thread Ray had created to steal my house became a rope around his neck. Then I made my move. I went to a locksmith on a Thursday morning while Ray was out getting breakfast at the diner on Woodstock Boulevard. New deadbolts, new knobs, new garage code. Every lock in the house changed. I stood in the living room afterward, and for the first time in weeks, I could breathe in my own home without feeling watched. Ray came back from breakfast that Thursday morning, turned his key in the lock. Nothing happened. He stood on the porch for 6 full minutes. I watched every second on the Ring camera from the clinic parking lot. He jiggled the handle. He tried the back door. He tried the garage. Then he finally pulled out his phone and called me. I let it ring 3 times. I picked up, and I said 5 words. The sheriff is on the way. 2 Multnomah County deputies arrived at 11:15 that morning. Ray was still standing on the porch, his breakfast bag from the diner in one hand, his useless key in the other. I watched from inside, standing in the hallway with Diana beside me. Marcus had coached me the night before. Don't engage, don't argue. Let the order speak. Deputy Morales approached Ray and served him with the emergency protective order. Ray read it slowly, then looked up at the house, directly into the Ring camera, and said, "This is my brother's house." Deputy Morales said, "Sir, the court order is clear. You have 30 minutes to collect your personal belongings with our supervision, and then you need to vacate the property." Ray tried charm first, smiled that easy smile. "Officer, this is a family misunderstanding. My niece is confused. She's grieving. She's not thinking straight." "Sir, the order includes allegations of forgery and identity theft. This isn't a misunderstanding. Please cooperate." Ray's face changed. The mask dropped. Whatever warmth he'd been performing since the day he showed up with those 2 suitcases just vanished. He turned toward the Ring camera and shouted, "You're going to regret this, Jess. Your father would be ashamed of you. He promised me." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Diana squeezed my arm, and I stood there in my own hallway, and I let the silence do the talking. The deputies escorted Ray inside. He packed his 2 suitcases and his duffel bag in 22 minutes. On his way out, he stopped in the doorway of the spare room and looked around like he was memorizing it. Then he walked out the front door, past the deputies, past Mrs. Delgado, watching from her porch with her arms crossed, and got into a cab. He didn't look back. 3 days later, the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office filed charges. 2 counts of forgery in the first degree, 1 count of identity theft, 1 count of attempted fraud. Ray was arrested at a motel off Interstate 84 near Troutdale. He was eating takeout when they knocked on the door. Columbia Credit Union voided the HELOC application within 48 hours of receiving the fraud documentation. I placed fraud alerts with all 3 credit bureaus and froze my credit. Linda Chow helped me file a formal challenge to the fraudulent power of attorney, which the county recorder's office invalidated and flagged. Marcus connected me with a victim's advocate through the DA's office, who walked me through what the criminal case would look like. Ray's public defender attempted to negotiate a plea deal, but the evidence was overwhelming. The forged documents, the ring footage, the fabricated ID, Shannon's testimony from the credit union, Dr. Patel's medical statement proving Dad couldn't have signed anything in May, Linda's sworn declaration, the outdated statute number on the forged power of attorney that proved Ray copied a template off the internet. The very paperwork trail he'd created to steal my house became the prosecution's exhibit list. Every forgery was a confession. Every filing was a fingerprint. Ray is currently awaiting trial, scheduled for early 2025. If convicted on all counts, he faces up to 7 years in state prison. Aunt Carol called me a week after the arrest. Her voice was quiet. She said, "I'm sorry, Jess. He did something like this to me, too. I should have warned you." Ray wrote me a letter from the Multnomah County Detention Center. 3 pages, handwritten. He said he was sorry. He said he'd been desperate. He said Frank really had promised him help, just not in the way he'd gone about it. He asked me to drop the charges. He said we were family. I read the letter once, sitting at the kitchen table where I'd found him sorting those papers that night. I folded it back into the envelope. I didn't write back. Some doors, once closed, stay closed. Family is not a free pass to take what isn't yours. By December, the house was quiet again. The good kind of quiet. I repainted the spare room a soft sage green and turned it into a reading nook. I adopted a 3-legged cat from the clinic named Biscuit, who liked to sleep on the windowsill where the morning sun hit. I got a raise at Hawthorne Animal Clinic after taking on surgical prep responsibilities. Diana came over for dinner every other Wednesday. Marcus texted me legal updates when there were any, and bad puns when there weren't. I started hiking again, the Wildwood Trail, like I used to with Dad. I brought Biscuit's adoption photo to the trailhead once and held it up at the viewpoint overlooking the city. "Still here, Dad," I said, "still holding on to what you gave me." Here's what I learned. Grief makes you generous in ways that aren't always safe. I let Uncle Ray into my home because I missed my dad so badly that even a broken version of him felt like comfort. But love isn't an open door for anyone who shares your last name. My father left me that house because he trusted me to protect it, and that's exactly what I did. The locks are changed, the title is clear, and I sleep just fine.